Hello and Happy New Year. So, quick introduction. My name's David Hannah. I'm the Chief Consultant at Cornerstone Tax and SDLT Refunds, and we have recovered over £15 million in SDLT overpayments in the last 12 months. This is a prevalent issue. They've not all been high value deals. Some have been cheaper, one might even regard as relatively small properties. But the same principles that we're going to talk about today may well apply in your circumstances. So let's get going and talk about these marvellous mansions and opulent properties that Channel 4 put out. And the first one I want to talk about is probably the most expensive property I've ever seen, Amberwood House in London, on offer at 75 million. Now, depending on who you are and where you are and what you're going to use the property for, this £75 million investment is going to set you back somewhere between 8.9 million and 12.67 million in SDLT. That difference only arises because it might be your main residence or it might be an investment purchase and you're a non-resident. But clearly getting those things right is important. A more modest, or at least in Channel 4's terms, a more modest property was of course South Bank Tower, which was a penthouse, core and shell, it hadn't been fitted out, on sale to a foreign buyer for 12 million. And again, SDLT on that could have been 1.354 million or as much as 1.95 million. Let's talk about St Pancras Chambers. Now, St Pancras Chambers, lovely little apartment in the St Pancras station, as you can see, on sale at 4.6 million, and if you bought it as your only home, 466,000 in stamp duty. If you bought it as a second home or a pied-à-terre in London and you're a non-resident, 696,000 in SDLT. Far more interesting to me was, in fact, the only property on the list that didn't consist of bricks and mortar, the Flamant Rose. Brilliantly beautiful houseboat, incredible historical provenance, having belonged to Edith Piaf. But interestingly, again, if you were buying that as your main residence, stamp duty 64,250, or as an investment as a non-resident, 168,000. And finally, Curzon Street in Mayfair, on the market at 8.75 million, beautiful luxury house. SDLT as your main residence, 965,000, or as a non-resident investor, 1.4 million. Two of the properties I've just mentioned actually don't have those stamp duty figures, and I'm going to tell you why in a little while. But first, an interesting comparison. The average house in the East Midlands in England costs 225,000, and if you were buying Amberwood, you could buy 1,327 average houses. Indeed, if you went to the relatively modest St Pancras at 4.6 million, you could still buy 7 average houses. And South Bank Tower, 196 houses. So, what's been missed? Well, in any of these properties, Amberwood House, St Pancras, Curzon Street, South Bank Tower, if there was a staff apartment as part of the property, then that could save 87,000 in SDLT. Probably small change to these people, but nevertheless worth having. But what were the two properties that I said I'd got it wrong? Well, I said I'd seen certain features, and the first of which is South Bank Tower, sold at 12 million as shell and core. What does that mean? Bare walls, bare floors, no fittings, no bathrooms. In fact, not suitable for use as a dwelling until it's been fitted out. And it was clear in the programme that the buyer was going to bring in his own interior designer and contractors to do it. So in actual fact, the buyer of South Bank Tower should only have paid 590,000 in SDLT. He's potentially exposed to 1.954 million SDLT, a potential overpayment of nearly £1.5 million if he hasn't taken advice on it. But the big surprise is the Flamant Rose, because houseboats, like caravans, aren't chargeable to SDLT at all. So you could have bought the Flamant Rose at 1.495 million, sitting in St Catherine's Dock in London, and I don't know what the mooring charges are, right next to Tower Bridge, and paid no stamp duty whatsoever. That's a fascinating thing. A beautiful home like that, but floating, attracts no stamp duty at all. Let's just talk about the average home. What impact can features like habitability or annexes have? It can save you anything from £10,000 to £87,000 by just having an annex, depending on the total size of the property. And by the way, that's per annex. But interestingly, because the maximum rate of SDLT on a residential purchase is 17%, but the commercial rate stays fixed at 5%, and commercial rate applies to not wholly residential or not suitable for use as a dwelling, that's a massive 12% of the purchase price could be saved by you when buying a property that you cannot live in on the day you buy it. Going back to South Bank Tower, possible overpayment of 1.1 million. As I said earlier, any property may be susceptible to these errors, and indications are up to 40% of properties in the UK overpay their SDLT for a variety of factors. If you want to know more and find out how we might be able to help you, click on the links, go to our website, and we'll be more than happy to do this kind of analysis on your home. If you've liked this video, please click like and subscribe to receive further updates, and we'll be back talking about the rest of the properties in Channel 4's series as soon as we've watched a few more episodes. I've been David Hannah. Thank you for listening.